Hey, what's up? This your boy Big Man. You already know what it is, man. So let's get right to it. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about Young Thug. Now, Young Thug's legal team and himself, they're supposed to be in court today. Now, his lawyers had filed this emergency motion for a bond hearing, and he's supposedly supposed to be arraigned today. You know, he's supposed to see a judge and finally get an understanding of him entering his plea of innocent or guilty. You know what I'm saying? Now, with Young Thug being in the hot seat or in court today, it seems like his lawyer did some interviews preemptively, you know, trying to make sure he got his word and his voice out there to try to clear Young Thug's name before they even go into court today. So we're going to go over some of the clips from the news story there, and we're going to talk about the charges against Young Thug and Gunna and what we're looking at after all. Also, I want to go back to a story where they talked about the jail that he's staying at. Now, there might be very good reasons why his attorney wants him removed from that jail, besides the obvious. You know, obviously it's easier to fight a case from the street, or at least it's more comfortable to do so, right? But, you know, there's been some issues at that jail that he's at. And I'm talking about serious issues, meaning people losing their life. Now, before we get into the specifics and talk about all these details, do me a favor. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And man, let's get it. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about this YSL situation, man. So for those of you who don't know what's going on here, you're just joining in on this story. YSL is a record label and being accused of being a street organization ran and founded by Young Thug. Now, Young Thug and Gunna both got arrested as being a part of this large RICO indictment in the state of Georgia. Now, this is a clip from a news story that talks about the charges that are levied against all the members in the indictment. So let's check that out real quick.
Now, the state's 88-page indictment claims that the YSL gang is one of the most violent in metro Atlanta. It includes 11 robberies, 2 murders, 10 attempted murders. That document also says one member attempted to kill 2 Atlanta Police Department officers in February. In March, 4 others are accused of murdering a rival gang member near I-20 in Atlanta.
Now, as you heard in that news story, YSL is being called a violent street gang. Now, this has been up for debate on social media for a while now because most people know YSL as a record label. I've gone through the indictment, talked about it several times, and it just seems like a reach in some parts. But all of those charges that the news reporter was talking about are very serious charges, man. You know, they're alleging some very serious things against YSL and against Young Thug and against Gunna. Now, no matter how you feel about it, it seems like they're going to have to work this thing out through the court system. Now, one person in particular that's fighting for Young Thug ride or die is his attorney, Brian Steele. This dude went to the news himself to do an interview right before they go into court today, just so that he can get Young Thug's side out there, man. Just so that he can let people know his concerns with Young Thug's safety and why he feels like he's getting an unfair trial here, or an unfair, judgment, being accused of doing something that he didn't do. Now let's look at a clip from the news story where his attorney was talking to the news about this.
He will be vindicated, but this is wrong.
Young Thug's attorney's position seems to be he's going to fight to ensure Young Thug doesn't grow old in jail, and that while he's locked up, he's held humanely.
He is being treated the exact same as the person next door to him, who has been arrested, tried, convicted for murder, and sentenced to death.
Now, Young Thug's attorney is trying to make some good points here. He's trying to say that Young Thug is being treated unfairly because he's sitting right next to a guy who's already been tried, convicted, and sentenced for his crimes. And Young Thug hasn't even had an opportunity to get a bond hearing yet because they pushed it forward because they needed him to see a higher level judge, I believe, was the statement that they said. So that's why he had to push for the emergency bond hearing, because he doesn't like the conditions that Young Thug is being held in. Because to be real, in that Cobb County jail, there has been 3 deaths recently in that jail. There was a news story that was done by the same news organization, this WSB-TV, or Channel 2 News there in Atlanta, and it said this. A headline said, Cobb County Jail reports 3rd inmate death in just weeks. Now, this story was released only a few days ago, you know what I mean? So his attorney has a lot, or even his family, people close to him, would be concerned when they find out that he's in Cobb County Jail. Now, to be honest, when I first heard this, I was like, oh man, they just complaining because he's in jail. he was living in a mansion. Now he's in a jail cell, and we've seen the picture of the jail cell. So obviously, that's going to take some getting used to, because that's a downgrade like no other, man. When you live in lavish and luxury, and then all of a sudden you stuck in a jail cell, you're going to have some gripes and complaints, I'm pretty sure. But when you look at the story that they recently published about 3 people dying in that jail, I would want to be out of there too. If I was his family, I would want him out of there too, man. Especially if he hasn't had an opportunity to get bonds. And they're probably worried about his safety. Like, they're genuinely worried about his safety at this point. When you hear things about that same jail that he's staying at, you know what I mean? Why even risk it? You see what I'm saying? Especially if you have legal representation. Now, let's look at another clip where his lawyer kind of professes his innocence and tells his side of the story.
Lawyer Brian Steele says the intent of a new motion he's filed is to get the music star, real name Jeffrey Williams, out on bond for the RICO conspiracy and gang charges he faces, with more than 24 other suspects in a Fulton County indictment for which the world-famous rapper was arrested Monday.
Without question or hesitation, Mr. Williams committed no crime whatsoever.
Or if not out of jail, then held in better conditions.
Going on the 5th day now.
Now, as you're hearing that clip, they're basically breaking down the indictment and going over what we already know, about the people who were arrested, the charges against him and things like that. But you hear his lawyer is professing his innocence. He's saying, with his stern voice, like, he is innocent and is ridiculous. And he's mad at the fact that he's been locked up for 5 days without even being able to see the judge, without it being able to, get bond or anything like that. They're obviously pushing hard for Young Thug to get bond. And in this next clip, we're going to see where he feels like these charges are trumped up. Like, he's got an explanation, and I want y'all to hear his explanation for why Young Thug is allegedly being brought into this RICO indictment.
Steele's motion also addresses allegations in the indictment. He told us, for instance, in connection with the car Young Thug allegedly rented in 2015 that was days later supposedly used in the murder of Donovan Thomas Jr., the indictment does not accuse Young Thug of having knowledge of the crime, that the car would be used, or that he was party to the murder.
If you look at the history of rental cars that Mr. Williams has done, other people always have access to cars. He doesn't drive all that often. He wasn't in the car.
Now, let's unpack that. Now, his lawyer said that, if you look at the history of Young Thug renting cars, that he always rents cars and has other people drive them. He doesn't drive that often or anything like that. Now, can they prove that? Now, is this a normal thing? And he's also saying that when the alleged shooting or drive-by went down where YFN Lucci's homeboy, Nut, or a.k.a. Donovan Thomas Jr., was shot and killed outside of a barbershop, that Young Thug was not in the vehicle. He had rented the car, but he had no prior knowledge that it would even be used in a crime or anything like that. Now, if you could prove that, obviously that would seem to prove his innocence, right? Or is this just his lawyer, coming up with a crafty way of getting Young Thug, out of that situation? Because if he clears him of that, he clears him of a lot of things. Now, he doesn't stop there. He also talks about this right here in this next clip in regards to the other charges. So let's check out this clip.
Maintains Young Thug is innocent, too, of drug and gun charges brought as a result of an Atlanta police search of his home on Allison Drive in the heart of Buckhead Monday, that other people were in the house and the guns were legal and some belonged to his security.
I am going to be with Mr. Williams every step of the way in every zealous, ethical, and lawful manner.
Now, you can hear in the early part of that clip, his lawyer is basically saying that he's innocent on the charges that he got after they raided his crib, right? So he got 7 additional charges, and it was weapons and drug-related charges, right? And he's saying there's a good explanation for that as well. Now, of course, all lawyers would say that. You know what I mean? That's what you pay your lawyer to say and do, right? But what do you guys think about this? Do you think that Young Thug's lawyer is reaching here? Or do you think that after today, we might hear, more in court, and maybe Young Thug is possibly innocent in this situation, and this whole RICO indictment is trumped up charges all put together? And that's a good question. So, man, y'all answer that for me in the comments. Now, with that, this has been your boy, Big Man. Do me a favor. Make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and make sure you hit that notification bell so that way you get a notification every time I drop this hot content. And we out of here. Peace.